Why I'm bearish on Nikola. This is StockerFinance. I'm your host, David Scheuer. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at StockerFinance. So Nikola recently surged over 500%. It's actually been difficult to produce this video because since then, the price has crashed about 20%, actually more than that now. Its current price is 63.76. Its market cap is 22.98 billion, and although it was worth more than Ford at one point and now is worth less than Ford, its market cap got as high as over 28 billion US dollars. Its PE ratio is 1,052. It has a 52-week low of $9.92, so obviously it's significantly above that 52-week low. But its 52-week high was 93.99, so it's come down quite a bit from that. It does not offer a dividend or anything in that nature. Now, the news has been interesting recently, because during that 500% price increase, just that massive surge, I saw a lot of bullish news saying it's going to be the Tesla killer. It's going to be the next competition to Tesla, like we always see with these new car companies. It always is the next Tesla killer. If you've invested in Tesla, even if you've just been following the company, you've known that a new Tesla killer comes out about every couple months. And so the news is now, though, has been shifting more towards the bearish sentiment, and we've seen short interest rise over 124% since that massive price increase. We're seeing fans and analysts could become more bearish, people on the news saying the stock's going to, could fall to $15 or less, etc., etc. So that is one thing since creating this video when I first started making it. The news sentiment has become significantly more bearish than it previously was. But now let's go over my reasoning for why I'm bearish on this company. Now, I don't actually like to be bearish on companies. I like companies to succeed. I actually hope Nikola succeeds and proves me wrong here, because that means they're going to be employing people. They do good things for the environment, etc. Competition is always a good thing. It furthers innovation. So I'm not, although I don't think this company will succeed, I am bearish on it. I think it's going to struggle a lot, at least. And I think it's significantly overvalued right now. If it does prove me wrong, I'm not going to be upset about that, because I'd rather see companies succeed, employ people, create jobs, etc., than fail. But anyways, here's a summary of my reasoning. Number one, I think it's simply overhyped. Number two, hydrogen power is a big issue here that I'm going to talk about. Number three, the fundamentals don't match the evaluation. It's really lacking fundamentals. Number four, dealerships and outsourcing, which I'll talk about briefly at the end, just doesn't make much sense to me, and I find it really odd, to be honest. So first off, let's talk about how this company's overhyped. Nikola had a $12 billion valuation and skyrocketed to $28.63 billion. It's now at about $22 billion, as you just saw. Now, this is just kind of a conspiracy here, but every car company that the media calls the next Tesla or a Tesla killer tends to get really hyped up. Everyone's talking about it, and then you just kind of don't hear about it, and it just goes off the radar for a long time. Usually there's some internal turmoil. Usually you see a CEO leave, some weird stuff happening. You see some investment come from other companies. It gets kind of odd. Even Rivian has yet to prove itself, even with orders and backing from Amazon as well as other large companies. Rivian really seemed like a company that maybe could stand a chance to kind of compete with Tesla, but it really hasn't gone anywhere, even with backing from Jeff Bezos. So perhaps it's just me as well, but Trevor Milton, the CEO of Nikola, is just no Elon Musk. And the CEO is really important in these companies, especially car manufacturing companies, which are some of the toughest, it's one of the toughest industries to start in and get going. Your CEO, your leadership, and the knowledge from that leadership is really important to keep the company running and to keep it together. But I've noticed some tweets from Trevor Milton, just kind of the way he acts in a lot of his interviews. He seems very salesman-y. Now, the business that I run personally outside of this YouTube stuff is there's a lot of sales involved. I do a lot of marketing for my business, etc. So I can kind of see a salesman when I see one. And Elon Musk, to me, doesn't seem like much of a salesman at all. He's talking about the stats of the cars, but he's also really awkward. He his presentations are notoriously cringy. They had the Cybertruck stuff went horribly wrong, but they still had tons of pre-orders despite that. So Trevor Milton here, though, in this tweet, he kind of seems bragging that Nikola is worth more than Ford and FCA. And he does say he wants to be an accessible and direct executor on Twitter, which I like. It's good to talk with customers and analysts, etc. But I don't know. To me, this kind of came off as bragging, and I don't really like that in a CEO, especially when it's about the market cap of your company, not about the actual products or engineering of your vehicles. I'm not a fan of that. Also, he was bragging about it being worth more than Ford, but now Nikola's worth less than Ford again, or it doesn't really make much sense why he was bragging about that since it happened so briefly. Ford's at 25 billion or about 26 billion market cap, and Nikola's about 22 and continuing to trend downward as of right now. So then this is a little article here that I just wanted to take a look at. I'm going to quote a few times. But he said there's very few people that can out Elon in this world. I'm one of them. Nikola's the pioneer in heavy duty trucking, and Tesla's just really following in our footsteps. I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. Tesla's following in Nikola's footsteps. It's just, it's one thing to say you can out Elon, and then to say that Tesla's following in your company's footsteps, even though you haven't even created a vehicle. You're losing tons of money. You don't have any manufacturing set up at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I kind of made this funny little slide here that Tesla is just jealous of us. That's kind of what he seems like he's acting about. And anyways, Tesla creates EVs that are not hydrogen-powered vehicles. The comparison doesn't really make much sense, besides that they're just both car manufacturers. Tesla has 3 factories, including one in China, up and running. They're making one in Germany as well right now. They have 600,000 pre-orders on Tesla Cybertrucks, 2,000 plus pre-orders on the Tesla Semi. Elon recently stated that this Tesla Semi will now be in production very soon. They're going to be ramping it up. Tesla unveiled the Tesla Semi in 2017, whereas Nikola unveiled its lineup of vehicles in 2019. So the whole thing that Tesla's following Nikola in its footsteps just came off as extremely arrogant to me, not something I like to see in a CEO. Now I want to compare Nikola to other Tesla killer startups before we get into more fundamentals of this company. Number one, you always had the fancy and wild presentations that reveal the car and generate hype. Those are the same with Tesla. They have fancy presentations, etc. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're always really over the top, etc. Generate tons of news media. Then you have investments from larger companies start to come in, or they go public, or whatever might happen. That's what I tend to see. And then they just drizzle off and go off the radar. You don't really hear much from them. The interviews stop. The media stops talking about them. And they kind of just disappear for a bit. They kind of just go dark. Then usually something happens with the CEO. People leave the company. There's some weird, not some very good news. And it really isn't, promoted that much. And then you really see none of these Tesla killers have done any substantial damage to Tesla, hurt sales, or even become profitable themselves. That's kind of the pattern I've noticed with these companies. Now, maybe Nikola will be different, but we'll see. Now, here's some problems with hydrogen that I'm going to talk about. Now, Nikola has 4 trucks here. They have the Nikola 1, Nikola 2, Nikola Tre, and they have the Nikola Badger. Maybe it's the Nikola 3. Perhaps I just spelled that wrong, but I wrote down Nikola Tre for some reason. Anyways, all 4 are hydrogen-powered, except for the Nikola Badger is the only one coming with the fuel cell electric vehicle version and a battery electric vehicle version of the truck. Now, here's a report by Bloomberg, which concluded the bulk of the car, bus, and light truck market looks to adopt battery technology, which are cheaper solution than fuel cells. Volkswagen recently made a statement. They said, "The conclusion is clear," said the company. "In the case of the passenger car, everything speaks in favor of the battery, and practically nothing speaks in favor of hydrogen." And we recently saw a quote from BMW as well, stating how they're going to be focusing on electric vehicles and not on hydrogen because it's simply more efficient and makes more sense to them. So here are the problems with hydrogen again. Hydrogen is not as efficient. Hydrogen as an energy source is actually extremely inefficient. Although it seems good when you talk about it, it's actually, when you get down to the numbers, it's not as efficient as electricity or battery-powered vehicles. So here's a process of converting hydrogen. I'm not an engineer, so please correct me if I get any of this wrong, but this is from my understanding. So you have compressing, chilling, and transporting the hydrogen before it transforms the hydrogen back into energy, which results in a 62 energy loss. If the initial energy amount were 100 watts, only 38 watts would remain for the intended use. So for consumer BEVs, our cheaper solution relative to FCEVs. And I want to see this graph here, which I like. This is the energy vector transformation, which is kind of what results in a lot of the loss. So it starts out, let's say there's a wind turbine. It creates 100 watts of electricity or power. 75 watts go to the hydrogen generation. So you just lost 25 there. Then you use another 10 when you talk about the compression and transportation. And then you lose more when you talk about the fuel cell conversion. And then you lose a little bit more when you have the electric power going directly to the vehicle, which then powers the vehicle. Whereas if you look at the electric version of this, you only lose 20 watts. So it goes from 100 watts, let's say it's also created by a wind turbine. You lose 5 from electricity transmission. Then you lose about 10 from the battery charge discharge. And then you use 5 watts from the electric power to vehicle drive. So you lose significantly less. And you can take a look at this article. If you lose this article just really explains it well. So make sure to go check this out. It's a Bloomberg article about why hydrogen is not as efficient as battery-powered vehicles. So make sure I'll link it below. Check it out if you want to see that in further detail. Here's some other problems with hydrogen. It's a great idea, as I was saying, but it's not as great when implemented. And the markets have been showing this. Most of the markets have been focusing resources on adopting electric vehicles and battery technology. So I don't see them suddenly making the switch to hydrogen at all. There's no infrastructure in place. You need fueling stations, whereas EVs, you can literally plug your car into a wall outlet. It costs $10 to $20 million per station to create one of those stations, according to the Nikola CEO. And since Nikola only has about 80 million, it has a significant amount of cash now that it went public, but I just don't see it spending that much money or being able to, especially when it's not profitable or anything, to create fueling stations in this massive network around the United States. Whereas Tesla already has the supercharger network, and also people can just plug their vehicles into their homes. I don't know. I don't see companies or the markets investing into hydrogen or switching direction anytime soon. That's for sure. And again, batteries are simply cheaper than hydrogen fuel cells. If any of that information is incorrect, if you want to disagree with me there, since I'm not an engineer myself, go ahead and comment below. I would love to have a conversation about that. Now let's talk about the fundamentals of Nikola. Tesla has had plenty of money problems. Do not get me wrong. The company almost went under in 2008, and that's part of the reason it actually went public in the first place. Elon took it public because they needed cash to survive. So even though it's starting to become sustainably profitable, and we're really starting to see the sentiment change and the money problem and et cetera looking a lot different for Tesla now than it was a few years ago, I actually think Nikola's money problem is significantly worse than what Tesla's was, because now you're accounting for all the competition that Nikola has. Tesla really had no competition in the early days, and to be honest, it really doesn't have much competition now either. The competition that Nikola is facing are Tesla, of course. Now traditional car manufacturers have been focusing tons of resources on creating EVs, as well as all the other Tesla killer companies out there that are just like Nikola, trying to create different electric cars or different types of cars. And trying to compete with Tesla and other traditional car manufacturers and just get a piece of that pie. So some of the fundamentals are just really, if we get into the numbers here, is that there's zero revenue projected this year for Nikola. They expect to generate their first $1 billion in sales in 2023. So it's still going to take 3 years, or about 2.5 years now, for them to generate their first $1 billion in sales, which is not that much. They were founded half a decade ago, which was surprising to me. I thought they were a more new company, but no, they were founded half a decade ago. But Nikola's already lost nearly $190 million. The end of year 2019, Nikola's cash on hand was around $86 million. And the CEO says Nikola's burning a couple million a month. My opinion, it's probably much more than just a couple million right now. Its PE ratio is over 1,000%, as you saw, and Tesla's PE ratio is around 227.01, which is still pretty high, especially since the domestic industry's PE ratio is 26.51. Also, as you saw by that article a little bit ago, and if we just look at the graphs, short interest rose by over 124%. With that massive 500% increase. Now, I haven't seen any news on whether that short interest has declined since the 20% drop. But in my opinion, it's probably going to continue to rise as more people realize the fundamentals of this company don't make sense. The company is extremely overhyped. And the valuation, even with that 20% decline, or more than 20% decline since its 52-week high, it still doesn't make any sense at this valuation. And his name's Ray. He does a lot of Tesla analyst, etc. And he tweeted this out, which I think makes a lot of sense. He says Nikola's market cap today is $26 billion with no factories. Again, it's $22 billion now. This is a couple days old. And no hydrogen trucks in sight. Tesla's market cap in March 2016 was $25 billion, but it has Fremont factory turning out 84,000 cars that year. Nikola is blatantly overvalued. Perhaps this one qualifies as a perfect short bet for Tesla Q. Just saying. I think that's so true. Even if you compare Tesla at the same time period, Tesla was doing significantly better and in a much better position than Nikola was at that same time period. I also thought this little Twitter thread was interesting. Trevor comes off as a used car salesman. I don't trust him. Elon is genuine. If you bet on a company based on his leadership as founder, my money's on Elon Musk. A lame leader can destroy a great company. I 100% agree with that. I 100% agree with that. I don't want to bash the guy, because I'm sure maybe he's a nice guy, maybe he's a great leader, but in my opinion, he's just coming off as a little arrogant, a little car salesman-y. He's been changing a lot of facts. There's just been some lies involved, and I really don't like to see that in a CEO, in my opinion, especially with a company that I'll be putting my money into, which I'm not putting my money in Nikola, but if I were to, that's definitely a red flag for me. And then at the bottom here from FUD, we say maybe Tesla needs to think about this differently. If Nikola with 0 factories, 0 cars produced is worth that much, then Tesla has to be significantly undervalued. Perhaps you're right. Maybe Tesla's significantly undervalued. But again, if you look at the PE ratios, it doesn't make much sense. Tesla's actually, its PE ratio significantly higher than the industry average PE ratio. And Nikola's is way, way, way higher than Tesla's. So perhaps Tesla is undervalued right now. And I actually think Tesla has a lot of room to grow, but Tesla's also backing a lot of that value up with technology, with just tons of software, with tons of things besides cars, with the whole energy sector that Tesla has, all that stuff. And I'm going to make a separate company is why I think Tesla actually has a lot of room to grow, actually significantly room to grow, even with it recently hitting its 52-week high of $1,000 or just over $1,000. But I still think it's a good point that you have to make there, but I just don't think Nikola's worth the value that it's at all. Even if Tesla's undervalued, I still don't think Nikola's worth what it is right now. And here's a little article I just want to read here. So the details show that shorted Nikola shares surged to an all-time high of 7.48 million as the share price jumped to $74 a share. The shorted shares represented roughly 2.42% of the total float of the company, and the urgency of their demand was reflected by borrowing fee, which stood at 117% at one point. At the end of May, Nikola's short interest was at 3.3 million shares, and therefore the rise to 7.48 million reflects a 124% rise in just 2 weeks. And this article is a little old. I won't be surprised if that's actually significantly higher now. Additionally, the data also reveals that during the 30 days, sorry, I'm having trouble talking right now for some reason. During the 30 days that ended on June 10th, Nikola's shorted shares grew by 6.27 million, with this growth reflecting 84% of the total 7.48 million shorted shares at the time. In the 7 days prior to Wednesday, the shorted shares grew by 4 million, and the sellers lost 300 million in market-to-market losses due to the extraordinary surge in share price witnessed by Nikola. Their positions did, however, end up gaining 71 million on Wednesday due to a 12% downward movement in Nikola's share price. And again, it's gone down over 20% since then. And I have a feeling that tons of people shorted the company at that top. We've actually seen a lot of big investors put money in bets on shorting Nikola. So the short interest has risen significantly. And here is short interest shares versus price, just to back this up here. And this graph is a little outdated as well, since this was June 5th and it's now June 15th. So, anyways, in addition to borrowing shares to short, options data for Nikola shares is also helpful in gauging current market sentiment for the stock. At the time of writing, 3,484 call options, right to buy at a strike of price of $70. If you don't know about options or too much, you can kind of skip this part, but or you can just kind of briefly go over this part here, but I'm still going to read it for those of you who understand. And it's just saying that there's some wariness in the sentiment right now about the stock's ability to sustain its current momentum. And obviously, this was proven true. It couldn't not sustain that momentum, and we saw over 20% decline in its price. So they got proven right here. It doesn't make any sense to the price that it was at, and I still think even at the price it's at now, it's significantly overvalued. So now I want to go over some quotes from the CEO here about its outsourcing manufacturing. Now Tesla, it has all its in-house manufacturing, as we see with all the gigafactories, companies, it has 3 factories right now, including one in China. It's building another one in Europe right now, in Germany specifically. And there's some rumors about one going to be built, a Terafactory in Texas perhaps. So they have all their in-house manufacturing, and they also sell online. They don't sell to dealerships at all. They all do it through their own company, which we've seen a lot of other companies now start to go that route as well. It's clearly the route that has been successful, especially for Tesla. Now other companies are switching there as Tesla leads the way. But now Nikola's going in the opposite direction. They're outsourcing their manufacturing, and they're going to be selling through dealerships, as I'll show a quote here in a second. So here's some quotes that we can read really quickly from their CEO. And this is from multiple interviews. So CNHAI Iveco will build all of our trucks to significantly de-risk Nikola operational execution. We have third-party logistics centers. And the colors here, this isn't 2 different people. This is the same CEO. I'm just color coding them to separate the quotes here because they're from different times. We like to pioneer tech, but we're not good at producing it. Okay, that's not a very good quote. That's not something you really want to see. It's not us. We just license the IP from some professors. If everything goes well, we just hand it off to someone and let them commercialize it. We don't do autonomy internally. There are companies that spent billions on it. No need for us. And this is a quote here from a comment I saw in another video. Basically, Nikola is just a brand. Nikola as a brand is nothing more than a sticker on Trevor Milton's laptop. The actual producing business, if it ever materializes, is everyone but Nikola. That's so true. They're outsourcing everything. It's just a brand. He's just controlling this brand, taking everything from everyone else, and not even putting it together. Other companies are putting it together for him, and he's just putting the brand on it and saying, this is Nikola. And I just don't think that's going to end up well for them. I don't think this is going to materialize. And if it does, I don't think they're going to make much money. I think this is going to fall off. I think the hype is going to die down as people forget about it, just like every other Tesla killer, every other big Tesla competitor. I don't think hydrogen is the way. Clearly, the markets, infrastructure, everything's going towards electric power and battery power. To just suddenly bring in hydrogen power and try to get tons of backing for it, it's just not going to happen. Even though there's not much competition for hydrogen power, the competition is all the electric vehicles, which are getting more and more advanced, especially with Tesla just leading the way through innovation in electricity. The million-mile battery is going to be coming out soon, with Tesla's battery day coming out, when they're going to release tons of new technology, or at least I think they will. And I just don't see Nikola really going anywhere, especially with outsourcing manufacturing, which has been proven to not be as successful. And one other thing here is they want to sell through dealerships now, which it's an outdated plan. We've seen tons of companies. Ford sells through dealerships. That's proven to not be very successful, especially when you compare it to companies like Tesla. We're seeing other traditional car manufacturers just switch to that Tesla model and go through only online and just sell through themselves and cut out that middleman. We'll now be working with major truck dealerships to sell and service Nikola trucks. This is incredible news, and we believe will create a greater cash flow and backlog of Nikola trucks on order. I just don't think that's the case at all. If anything, I think it's going to hurt your margin. I think it's going to create lots of sitting Nikola cars just sitting there doing nothing. There's going to be a big problem. I just don't think it's going to be successful, especially in today's day and age with the pandemic going on, all this stuff. Now more than ever is the time to sell directly online and directly to the consumer, not go through a middleman where there's another person involved that has to be there. I think this is a terrible decision. I think this is another reason, just based on all the other reasons we had of hydrogen, the fundamentals, the overhypedness, my issues with just Trevor Milton himself, the CEO. I don't know, formulate your own opinion, but in my opinion, I am bearish on Nikola, and I think the current value is significantly overvalued. I don't know what the true value for this company is at, because in my opinion, it's $0. I don't see this company going many places. Again, I hope they prove me wrong. I hope they're successful, and I hope that they create jobs. I hope they help the environment, etc. That would be great to see, and I would love to see that, but I just don't see it happening, at least not right now. So anyways, thanks for watching. If you disagree with me, if you're bullish on Nikola or whatever, if you have different reasons for being bearish, please comment below or tweet at me at StockerFinance. Check out these videos as well. Please subscribe. I love to talk. I love to have conversations with people. And yeah, anyways, I'm bearish on Nikola, and please subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.